And when I looked up, I seen a figure in the spotlight. 3 steps and it was gone.
Did anybody mention the word Bigfoot?
We knew what it was, and people disappear out here. These things come and take them. That's why a lot of people don't like to talk about it.
Is that something that's commonly reported, that people are disappearing in this area?
That's what I've heard.
I'm creeping round the bed. Creeping. With that?
From the shadowed banks of Kansas's Neneska River to Alaska's predator-filled forests, Oregon's highways, the Witch's Den, Pearson Creek, and Windwalker's 1988 hunt, growls echo, figures move silently, and eyeshine pierces darkness, each story proving that some mysteries of the wild watch, wait, and refuse to be forgotten. On Animal Planet, the investigation moves along the shadowed banks of the Neneska River, where unanswered questions hang thick in the night air. BFRO investigators trace the river's winding path, while the rest of the team gathers at a town hall, listening to witnesses whose chilling accounts could finally narrow the search. Ken and Gary recall a moment of sudden dread. Someone, or something, was down there. When the spotlight lifted, a figure appeared, then vanished into the darkness in an instant. There was no doubt, no hesitation. In the spotlight stood a figure, uniform in color, solid, and impossibly out of place. It moved with a calm that felt wrong, each step deliberate and unhurried.
While I continue my investigation along the Neneska River, the rest of the team is meeting with witnesses from our town hall in hopes of narrowing down this search.
He said something to the effect of, "We're not alone," or "somebody down here." And when I looked up, I seen a figure in the spotlight. 3 steps and it was gone. No mistaking it.
No mistaking.
It was one color. It was walking as a, steady pace, and 3 steps, it was gone.
Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it slipped back into the darkness, leaving only the weight of its absence. Later, Ken and Gary recounted the moment with absolute conviction. Every detail reinforced the same chilling truth. Something beyond explanation had crossed their path that night. At the site, the investigator retraced the path described by the witnesses. The stride was measured, powerful, deliberate, nothing frantic or erratic. As the motion was recreated, it became undeniable. The gait was unnatural, unlike any human run.
Yeah, it was not a man.
Ken and Gary responded to my line of questioning in a very, very natural way. Their answers were spontaneous and had a very honest ring to all of them. Everything they described totally jives with them seeing a Sasquatch that night.
Stop me when I get to the right place, okay?
Since Bobo's not here and we don't have the team member that most approximates the size and disposition of a Bigfoot, I'm gonna step in and see if I can duplicate the speed as it moved across the road.
From the witness's view, the creature crossed the road in full view. No obstruction, no fleeting glimpse. Whatever moved there was seen clearly, leaving an impression that refuses to fade. Testing the distance made the scale impossible to ignore. It took several human steps to cover what the creature crossed in barely a few.
So from here, you saw it running, I presume, this direction?
Yes. It was a long, brisk stride.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can replicate that.
Okay.
Yes, that was a similar gait.
Looking at where the creature walked from their perspective, there's no doubt that they had an excellent view as it walked across the road.
The realization sank in quietly, but with certainty. The investigator no longer questioned the account. One explanation fit the stride, the reach, and the presence. Bigfoot.
There were no obstructions whatsoever. They said that my speed matched pretty well to what they saw. However, it took me 5 or 6 steps to cover the same distance that the creature covered in only 3. I know what they saw. It was a Bigfoot.
Sightings like this are rare everywhere, and in Kansas, almost unheard of, making this encounter extraordinary. Bait was carefully placed at the site, each piece fitted with tracking technology.
So how was that?
It has to be a Bigfoot. I mean, it has to be, which is cool.
You're very, very lucky to have seen one here. Very few people get to see them at all.
If anything touched it, the signal would reveal its path. The location was perfect. Intersecting game trails marked frequent wildlife movement. If something powerful and curious lurked in the shadows, this setup was designed to draw it out and leave a trace. With the trap in place, only one element remained.
Well,
So how many Bigfoots did you find?
Exactly 0, but there's no doubt what they're moving along, the Nineska. The special thing about that river, no matter how dry it gets, it's got water running through it. And because of that, all the animals will concentrate in there.
The unknown presence they hoped to lure in. The bait, left untouched for days, had spread its scent through the freezing air, catching the attention of nearby wildlife. Multiple food sources were placed strategically, one already showing signs of activity. The team decided to move in together, then reassess at the site.
If we want to have our own encounter with a Bigfoot. Unfortunately, the Nineska River is almost 100 miles long. Obviously, that's way too much ground to try to cover in one night, so we need to narrow down our search grid to find the perfect spot to focus on this critical waterway.
The town hall meeting was held at the Wichita Aviation Museum, and those guys said they'd be willing to take me up into a plane to survey the area. And I figured from up there, I can direct you guys to the right spot down below.
yeah, the most covers what we're going to be looking for.
And if nothing else, I get to ride in the cool 1943 plane.
Yeah.
Whatever had been circling the area might finally be close. As the team neared the bait, one question hung in the cold night air.
Clip originally wanted to drop these meat bombs out of the sky with GPS as a track where squatches might be able to pick them up, but the FAA wouldn't let him do it. Seeing Clip know that he was up in that plane, this cool looking plane, he's flying up there, I was pretty jealous. But I wouldn't fit in that plane, so nothing I could do.
Now we just need a Bigfoot.
Would the shadow haunting the river finally reveal itself, or slip back into the darkness, leaving only whispers of what might have been? On an isolated stretch of Alaskan wilderness, far from the nearest town, the D-MAX UK BFRO team moves cautiously through dense undergrowth. The logging crew that guided them recalls strange disturbances. Tools shifted, supplies vanished, only to reappear at the forest edge. Could a bear explain it? No tracks, no signs, nothing. Every shadow deepens the mystery. Every step hints that what prowls here isn't just part of the wilderness, it's something else entirely. Soon after the disturbances began, an unfamiliar sound sliced through the forest stillness. The crew struggled to describe it.
Makes me nervous just thinking about it.
And the screams that you were hearing, did it sound like they were coming from really close to this area?
Well, the first night when we heard them, it was coming from down in the woods a little ways, and every night they just got a little closer, a little louder, to the point where it was just scary and helpless all at the same time, because something didn't want us here.
And this just started happening a couple weeks ago?
A little over a couple weeks ago, because about 2 weeks ago is when everybody finally just had enough and had to get out of here.
Some claimed it sounded like a woman in distress, yet no one else was for miles. Their instincts screamed, this was no ordinary animal. They knew these woods intimately, yet nothing made a sound like this. Raw, primal, and impossible to ignore, it sent shivers down their spines. Even now, recalling it makes the hairs stand on end, as if the forest itself exhaled something ancient and terrifying.
For you guys to actually stop your work and leave this site.
I mean, we felt like sitting ducks out here. Just didn't feel safe.
Did anybody mention the word Bigfoot?
We knew what it was, and people disappear out here. These things come and take them. That's why a lot of people don't like to talk about it.
Is that something that's commonly reported, that people are disappearing in this area?
That's what I've heard.
The other witnesses I spoke to about this event had very similar stories, and the fact that these people were willing to give up months of work.
On the first night, a haunting sound drifted from the forest, distant, yet impossible to ignore. Each evening, it crept closer, its intensity growing until the darkness felt alive.
I had to count on what I was hearing. And that sound faded away and outdistanced me to where I couldn't follow those sounds anymore.
I can't tell which way it went.
There's something out there ahead of us. Sounded bipedal. Literally sounded like something running. I felt like I was right on its heels, but whatever this thing is, it's moving much faster than I can move in this forest.
What was that? I want to go back to where we were. At least we have something there.
The crew sensed a weight pressing down, a silent warning that they were trespassing in something older and far more dangerous than they could comprehend. The disturbances had begun only weeks earlier, yet fear spread like wildfire. One by one, men abandoned the site, unable to stand against whatever presence had claimed the woods. The word went unspoken, but it lingered like smoke. Bigfoot. In these shadowed woods, people had vanished without warning, swallowed as if the forest itself had teeth. Every whispered story, every nervous glance to the tree line carried the same truth.
Where is it? Wait, hold it. We're right here. It was right there, man. I don't see it on the ground.
I'm sure I'm standing in the same spot. I'm standing right in front of this log. I'm looking at the same tree. And up here, there's nothing. Whatever was hanging is now gone.
I need to look on your camera. That's what, about 20 feet up? How would it get up there? A bear couldn't have got up there and not broken off those branches on the way.
Whatever lived here did not want to be seen, and did not care who knew. The crew felt it in every rustle, every snapping twig, every chill crawling up their spines. The woods weren't empty. They were alive, patient, and hungry. The team cleared a small patch to rest after hours of trudging through dense undergrowth. Every shadow twitched with unseen movement, as if testing its strength before venturing out again under night's cover. Exhaustion pressed down, then a sound snapped their muscles taut. Close, too close. The forest was no longer just a backdrop, it was alive and it was watching. Suddenly, movement snapped their attention. The presence was unnervingly close. A metallic, pungent odor filled the air. On the forest floor lay something unidentifiable. Fragments of flesh, hair, or skin, torn from somewhere or someone.
Clear some of that stuff out of there and sleep right in here.
I've covered a lot of distance just now. Just shut it down for a few hours and see if I can get back out here tonight.
Can you get in? Here we go. That's big. Listen to that. Holy crap. That is close. Let me get out there just for a bit, okay? Just give me a second.
Branches snapped violently along its path. Hearts pounded as they strained to hear the faintest shift. Silence pressed from every direction, heavy and expectant, as if the forest itself were holding its breath, watching, waiting, ready to reveal what lurked just out of sight. Russell planted his feet, staring at the familiar log and tree. Whatever had been hanging there was gone, leaving only unsettling silence. He crouched, inspecting the branches, smooth, unbroken, as if it had vanished without a trace.
Let's look that over. There's something hanging from the branches. A chunk of skin.
I need to know what it is.
It was just very out of place, just really weird.
I need to be alert tonight, that's for sure.
Yeah, we came right up through here.
No bear, no ordinary animal could leave a scene so untouched. Something else had been here. Deliberate, strong, impossibly silent. Alaskan bears here were massive, wild, and unaccustomed to humans. Creatures of raw strength and unpredictable temper. Emerging from their dens, driven by hunger, they moved with relentless purpose. In this peak season, one misstep could turn fatal. Every shadow could hide movement. Every rustle warned that the forest was no longer just a place to walk. It was a threat. On Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot revealed, every story begins with a witness, and this one leads straight into Oregon's rugged wilderness. Larry Turner, a lifelong Oregonian from the Portland area, recalls the moment his life changed forever. In 1981, while elk hunting near the Forest Grove region along the highway toward Tillamook, Larry encountered something he couldn't explain. His first brush with the Bigfoot phenomenon. What started as a routine hunt quickly became an encounter with the unknown.
I'm from the Portland area, native Oregonian, and I'm asked about my first experience. My first experience with the phenomena of Bigfoot happened in 1981. I was elk hunting between Hague Lake, which is Forest Grove area, and Highway 6 towards Tillamook.
Larry chose the skid road, a safer route than forcing his way through dense underbrush. About 10 minutes in, an uneasy feeling settled over him, a nervous chill that refused to fade. He kept moving, then stopped cold. Every hair on his neck and arms stood on end, as if the shadows themselves had come alive. Something was out there, moving silently, watching. He had never felt a presence so intense, so aware.
I found this skid road, a real old one. So I started walking up the skid road, which is better than beating the brush. About 10 minutes in, I didn't feel right. There was something kind of wrong. I felt really nervous. So I jacked around into my 30-06 and started walking up the hill, up the skid road.
As though the forest itself was waiting, calculating. Out of the corner of his eye, something moved, a shadow slipping through the brush. Larry turned slowly, his breath catching as fragments came into view. The swing of an arm, the bend of a knee, the outline of a torso. It didn't react like any known animal. Instead of fleeing, it lingered, deliberate, aware, watching him. The unease intensified with every step. To his left, toward the west, something moved, keeping pace with him in a steady, unsettling rhythm. Then it happened, a deep, guttural sound unlike anything he had ever heard.
And the next thing I know, I stop and my hair standing up on the back of my neck, hair standing up on my arms, and I can't figure out what's going on. I've been around bear, I've been around cougar, been around all the apex predators, and I've never felt like this before. So then I take this step and I catch something on my periphery vision, and there's this black figure in this brush.
Fear surged instantly. The forest had changed, and he knew, without question, he was no longer alone. Heavy footfalls moved around the tent, slow, deliberate, tightening the darkness with each pass. Suddenly, the dog bolted in panic, diving into the sleeping bag and trembling uncontrollably. Larry's mother held him close as he shook with fear. This wasn't how an animal reacted to a bear or a cougar. This was pure terror. Then came the sound, low, unfamiliar, and chilling, unlike anything they had ever heard before. Down the road, a dark figure suddenly appeared, impossible to miss. At first, it looked like a man dressed in black, standing motionless at the roadside. But as he approached, the illusion shattered. The figure stepped into the road with startling speed. It was enormous, towering, broad, unmistakably male. A Sasquatch. It took 2, maybe 3 deliberate steps across the road, time slowing as the impossible unfolded in full view. That moment changed everything. Belief turned to certainty the instant their eyes met. The creature's size and the deliberate way it revealed itself left no room for doubt. This wasn't coincidence. It felt intentional. He had driven that road countless times, and in that instant, he sensed the being knew exactly who he was.
Seen a knee, seen a leg, thigh, seen a chest, but not the entire subject? Who do you tell? The fascinating thing that I want to preface about this is that this area where I had this experience of being touched, if you will, as a crow flies, was 6 miles from that area.
And that he was there. For Larry, the true reward was simply being in the woods. Bigfoot sightings were rare, just icing on the cake. What mattered most was the connection to nature, the balance it restored. Too many people had lost that instinct, that need to immerse themselves in the wild. It was this bond with the environment that made the experience unlike anything else. After every shadow, every sound, and every encounter with the impossible, one question remains. What else is out there, just beyond sight, in the forests we think we know? On Oregon Public Broadcasting, the search for Bigfoot is examined through a very different lens, one that moves beyond cameras, traps, and expeditions. While countless films and docuseries portray hunters combing forests in hopes of capturing or proving the creature's existence, indigenous voices from the Pacific Northwest offer a deeper perspective. To them, Bigfoot is not something to be found but a spiritual presence woven into ancestral stories, cultural memory, and everyday life. Rather than a myth to chase, Bigfoot is a living idea, respected, remembered, and quietly acknowledged across generations.
It's interesting to see all of these searching for Bigfoot films, documentaries, docuseries, where they're literally out there looking to find Bigfoot, capture him. I don't really know what they're expecting to do. They'll never find him because Bigfoot is spirit. Being a native person, especially from the Northwest, Bigfoot is in all of our stories. Bigfoot is thought about, considered almost weekly in people's lives, almost daily.
No one anticipated that a piece would be created for Bigfoot. Yet, as the idea took shape, certain elements felt inevitable. Shells intertwined into the design, accents of raw wood, and a cloak of the darkest hues. Bigfoot had always held a fascination, glimpses caught here and there, fleeting, unconfirmed, and always referred to as he, though no one could truly know if it was male or female. Memories of Pearson Creek lingered vividly, echoes of that distant call piercing the stillness, a place disturbed, and everyone knew Bigfoot did not welcome such intrusions. The forest seemed alive, watching, waiting.
I expected that I would be creating piece for Bigfoot. And so when I'm thinking about this dress, I knew it needed to have shells. I knew it needed to have wood on it. I knew it needed to be a dark, dark color.
I've always liked Bigfoot. I've seen him a couple times. And here we say he, because it really can't see a gender, so we don't know if we're seeing a he or a she.
Remember when we heard Bigfoot up at Pearson Creek?
Well, there was logging going on up there, and they do not like.
Whenever someone ventures into the forest searching for Bigfoot, it is almost always white men leading the way. Rarely do they glimpse the creature itself, but the forest has a way of revealing other things, hidden fears, forgotten memories, pieces of themselves they never expected to confront. Every snapped twig, every shadow shifting in the undergrowth seems to watch them back. In the hunt for a legend, they often find something far more unsettling, the quiet truths that the wilderness keeps for itself.
Destructive stuff to some of their equipment.
Every time I've heard of somebody looking for Bigfoot, well, it's mostly white men, they never find Bigfoot, but what they do find out is a lot about themselves.
That's true.
For native residents, they have always seen him more than a legend, as part of the family, a shadow among the trees, quiet, yet ever present. Generations have coexisted with him, feeling his presence without needing proof. Some may doubt his existence, but those who know the forests understand. He has walked these lands for centuries, unseen, yet never absent, a living secret of the wilderness.
I think the way we view him is that he's like family. And I think that we have coexisted with him for a long time. It makes me think of why people might say Sasquatch isn't real. And it's like, that's clearly up to you, and you can believe the way you want to believe. But I've always believed that this is definitely something that has lived here for a long time.
In the world beyond the mainstream, the question isn't whether Sasquatch exists. For native people, that is never the point. Their stories, passed down through generations, carry a knowledge older than any map or record. These encounters are vivid, profound, and undeniable. Reminders that the unseen still moves among them. Every rustle in the trees, every shadow in the twilight, whispers the truth. They are part of a larger mystery that refuses to be solved.
You look at the larger mainstream, really it comes down to an issue of whether or not you believe in Sasquatch. For Native people, that's not the issue. Our oral traditions and our oral history are actually a kind of knowledge system. Our people will continue to have these kinds of experiences, as profound as they are. And that experience just tells us that we are still a part of this greater mystery.
If Bigfoot has quietly walked these forests for generations, witnessed only in fleeting shadows, whispered in stories, and felt more than seen, then what does it truly mean to encounter him? Is he a spirit of the wilderness, a mirror to our own fears, or something far older? Meet Gaz, the adventurer behind Grizzly Gaz, whose videos take viewers deep into solo camping and bushcraft expeditions, often with his loyal dog, Fendi. On a familiar stretch of woodland, Gaz felt the usual thrill of the wild. But tonight was different. As wind whistled through the trees, he noticed a flicker near the so-called witch's den. Shadows shifted, and for a moment it seemed as if someone, or something, was watching. In the wilderness, even the safest places can hold secrets waiting to be discovered.
I always feel like somebody's just gonna pop its head up over. Annoyed out already. And there it is, the witch's den. You ready, mate? Yeah? You can hear the wind just whistling through those trees. I'm sure I just saw a light or maybe some eye shine.
The forest was nearly pitch black, and Gaz could barely make out the path ahead, moving cautiously. A branch snapped somewhere in the shadows, making him pause. In a place like this, the mind plays tricks. Wind rattling branches, trees groaning under unseen weight. Every creak and whisper of the woods seemed amplified, and even the familiar forest felt alive, watching, and unpredictable. Tonight, the wilderness had its own rules, and Gaz was about to learn them the hard way.
Can't see much in here. But let's go find the witch's den. Sure, I just heard a branch break over there somewhere.
Upon entering the darkened forest, the usual calm of the evening gave way to a tense unease. Wind tore through the trees, sending branches crashing to the ground. The trunks groaned and squeaked under its force, echoing through the shadows. Gaz paused, eyes scanning the restless darkness, the flickering movement of leaves making the woods seem alive. Even the wind itself carried a weight. The atmosphere pressed in, setting a chilling tone before the night had even truly begun.
Wind knocking branches over. Trees squeaking. Hear that wind.
Gaz's gaze locked on a faint glimmer deep in the shadows. For a moment, the forest fell silent. Then came the subtle, chilling reflection. Eyeshine, watching from the darkness, deliberate and unblinking, sending a shiver down his spine. Branches cracked and snapped all around him, echoing through the shadowed forest. Gaz's eyes darted from shape to shape. That's proper creepy. The tension pressed in from every direction, and for the first time that night, he admitted it. He was on edge. Definitely on edge.
Cracking and stuff. Look at this, look.
That's just proper creepy, that, isn't it?
Flashes of movement appeared through the shadows. "Someone's been here," came the whispered observation. A fresh cut on a tree drew the eye. Sharp, unmistakable, likely no more than a week old. The forest seemed alive, trunks creaking and groaning as if shifting away, each sound amplifying the tension. Darkness pressed in from every side, and every rustle hinted that something, or someone, was watching.
Keep seeing flashes of stuff like, oh look, someone's been here. That looks like a fresh cut, does that? That's definitely fresh. Probably a week old or something, if that.
A sound drifted through the darkness, faint at first, almost like a dog. But there was something off about it. Whatever it was, it moved with weight, immense and deliberate. Eyes caught a glint of reflection up along the side of a wall, large, unblinking, and watching. The presence felt enormous, and the instinct was clear. It was time to move, fast, before the forest revealed any more of its secrets.
Whatever it is, it sounds big, so I think me and Fenzel should get out of here. Pretty sure I saw eye shine right up there, on the side of that wall. It looked pretty big as well. Hold on.
Advice had always been to look up, but tonight the only concern was the branches overhead, creaking and threatening. A sudden sound cut through the stillness. A startled exclamation broke the silence. Something, a sneeze or something eerily close, echoed from the shadows ahead. The source was just out of sight, yet impossible to ignore. The noise was wrong, unnatural, sending a shiver down the spine and pushing the tension higher with every heartbeat.
Everyone always tells me to look up, but the only reason why I'm looking up is for branches. Right. Come on, let's get out of here. I'm sure I've just heard someone sneeze.
Movement was slow, deliberate, creeping around him, every step careful in the dim light. Then came a sudden, jarring sound. Something had struck the window, sharp and startling. Eyes scanned the shadows, catching a glimpse of something small yet unsettling, watching every cautious move.
And I'm creeping round the bed. Creeping, creeping, creeping. What with that? All right here. Someone just hit my window.
Though the forest eventually fell silent and the night passed without further incident, the experience left an uneasy mark. Was it merely the tricks of the wind and shadows, or had something far more deliberate been watching from the darkness? Windwalker. Outdoor brings stories from the heart of the wilderness, where silence can be louder than fear. Everyone who has walked these woods carries a memory that chills them to the bone. Tonight, one such experience unfolds, an encounter that turned an ordinary hike into a night no one could forget.
Alright guys, it's story time. I'm pretty sure most of you guys watching have had maybe an experience in the woods that was scary. And I know a lot of times when I go into different forums, somebody will pose the question, what was the scariest thing that ever happened to you?
In 1988, deep in a quiet corner of the forest, a hunter climbed a tall pine tree, setting up his stand among the shadows. Nearby, a couple of apple trees hung heavy with fruit, a natural lure for deer that wandered through this isolated spot. The canopy above was thick, the towering pines casting long, dark shadows that turned the woods into a maze of light and gloom. What began as a routine archery hunt soon felt different. Strange noises, shifting shadows, and the kind of stillness that makes a person wonder if they're truly alone.
Back in 1988, I was archery hunting out of this tree. Had a climbing tree stand. We have a couple apple trees right here. Usually, you know, to bring the deer in. I mean, I come up and check just about every summer to see if there's apples on them, because if there's apples, there'll be deer coming in here, these isolated apple trees. But anyway, then this tree stand hunting. Now, back then, this used to get real dark in here because these pine trees were alive. There's 2 of them, and they provide a lot of shade. It used to be thick in here. I mean, that was how many years ago? That was, what, 30 years ago?
As he shifted his weight in the tree, turning to secure the strap on his stand so he could climb down, a sudden sound cut through the stillness. It was not a roar, but something sharper. A brief, unsettling growl. It carried the same tone someone might use to startle a child. The sound came without warning, close enough to demand attention. His reaction was immediate. He reached out instinctively, convinced at first that someone nearby was playing a cruel joke. But in the fading light, surrounded by the quiet woods, there was no one in sight. Only the echo of that strange sound lingering in the air.
So I got turned around. I was trying to unfasten my strap from my tree stand so I could climb down the tree. And when I did that, I heard a growl. I guess you could call it a growl. I'm going to try to imitate it the best I can. It went, "Rawr!" And it sounded just like that, like I was saying the growl. Just like when you would try to scare a little kid, you'd get "rawr!" Like, that's what it sounded like. It didn't sound like a snarl. It wasn't deep. It was kind of high-pitched.
It didn't take long for him to understand this was no prankster hiding in the trees. The sound belonged to some creature, something alive, powerful. It wasn't just loud. It shook the air around him, rattling his chest like the deep thrum of a turkey gobbling too close for comfort. He froze for a moment, then instinct took over. A low growl escaped him in return, small but defiant, as if to challenge the unseen presence lurking in the shadows of the forest. The silence that followed was heavier than any darkness he had ever known.
So I realized, it didn't take very long, I realized that that wasn't a person. Whatever that was some kind of animal. Now this sound was loud, that "rawr." It was loud that I could feel it vibrating off my chest. Similar to when if you ever had a gobbler gobble at close range, that loud, you could feel it in your chest. Well, that's what this was like. So anyways, it growled, I growled back.
Unarmed and alone, he sat frozen, weighing his options as darkness thickened around him. The growl came again, low and menacing, echoing through the trees. Night had fallen fully now, and the forest had become a shadowed maze, every movement uncertain, every sound amplified. Finally, he made a decision. He couldn't stay perched in that tree all night. He had to descend. Heart pounding, he began climbing down as fast as he dared, shouting into the night, commands, warnings, anything to break the silence. "Go away! Leave me alone!" His voice bounced through the woods, a desperate attempt to mask the sound of his own movements, a feeble shield against whatever was lurking unseen below.
Sitting there debating what to do, it growls again. I'm scared. I mean, it's getting later and later. It's pretty dark by now. I mean, it's hard to see with just your eyes. So I just made up in my mind that I was going to have to come down that tree one way or the other. I was not going to spend the whole night in that tree. Even though I thought about it, I was not spending the whole night in that tree. So I come down the tree as fast as I can. The whole time I'm coming down the tree, I was just yelling, "Get out of here, leave me alone, get out of here, just go, get." And I was basically yelling that, so that hoping that that would cover up the noise if I heard something, just to cover up the noise of hearing it.
The fear from that night lingered long after he left the forest. For 4 years, he avoided that area entirely, unable to shake the memory of the growl that had filled the trees with an almost tangible presence. Even decades later, he couldn't identify what he had heard. Nothing in recordings or other wildlife came close to that haunting sound. 30 years have passed, yet the memory remains vivid. Now, whenever he returns to the woods, he never ventures unarmed. The forest may be quiet, the shadows may seem ordinary, but the memory of that night reminds him that some encounters are not meant to be forgotten, and some mysteries of the wild refuse to be explained.
I was scared, and I have to say I did not come back to this area for years. I was not hunting these woods for years. I'm not sure what it was. With the internet, even today, I've listened to recordings of bobcats, different kind of sounds, growls, and I have not found anything that sounded like this did. So that's a true story. That happened to me right here in this spot 30 years ago, and I haven't forgot it yet. And even today, anytime I'm in these woods hunting or anything.
So, what really prowls these woods when the shadows grow long, and how many of these encounters remain hidden just beyond our sight? Footage courtesy: Small Town Monster. The investigative team, known for exploring the country's most mysterious Bigfoot sightings, left the forests of the Adirondacks and traveled to western Massachusetts to uncover more about the elusive creature in the northeast. Along the way, they noticed that Kinderhook was right on their route, so they decided to stop in this small Hudson Valley town. There, they met Bruce Hallenbeck, a key figure in Bigfoot research and co-author of Monsters of the North Woods, who could reveal more about the mysterious creature.
Creature sightings and Bruce and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. If in some of these regions, it's not what you would expect. Albany, New York, the capital of New York, if you go just 10 miles south, you will run into Kinderhook, New York. They have a creature down there. The leading expert on the Kinderhook creature is Bruce G. Hallenbeck. And Bruce Hallenbeck, several members of his family have had close encounters with a creature and multiple creatures down in that region.
The story of the Kinderhook creature begins long before sightings made headlines. It starts with a family encounter that would leave a lasting impression. One day, Barry, a cousin of the storyteller, was setting traps in the swampy land behind his parents' house when he came running back, pale and shaken.
In or around 1980, which is not all that far removed from the A-Bear incident of 1976. This was a time in history where Bigfoot sightings were happening all over the country, and there was a general sense that it's all right to talk about these things.
The creature or creatures in the Kinderhook area.
It's very elusive, whatever it is.
In fact, Hallenbeck says this thing is so elusive that he'll sometimes see tracks and then they suddenly stop, as if the creature had vanished into thin air.
Can you walk us through the Kinderhook creature events?
The Kinderhook creature story really is, in a way, the story of my grandmother.
He had seen 3 strange creatures across the creek. Tall, bipedal beings covered in reddish-brown hair, making eerie clacking and grunting sounds. This terrifying moment would mark the beginning of a family legacy intertwined with the mystery of the unknown. Later that year, the storyteller's grandmother began noticing strange activity around her home.
Creature curled up in the fetal position on her lawn, and she watched for a minute thinking it was a bear that was going to get up and walk, lumber away. Whatever it was got up, stood on 2 legs, and walked away. And they wrote to the Times-Union back then, a columnist named Barney Fowler, and he dubbed it the Kinderhook creature.
Close encounter with the creature.
Oh, he was big, tall, and he was standing on his 2 feet just like a person, and covered with black hair.
So he published a letter, and as a result of that, scores of other people wrote in saying that they had had similar experiences. They'd either seen something or they'd heard something they couldn't explain.
Trash bags were disappearing from her porch, only to be found in the middle of the yard, untied and rifled through, as if someone, or something, was searching for food. It seemed to have fingers, she thought. Soon she learned that her neighbor, Mrs. Walters, was experiencing the same disturbances. One day, she even found her trash bag hanging in a tree. Then, one early morning around 5 o'clock, as the first light of day crept in, the grandmother looked out her kitchen window and froze. On the ground, curled up in a fetal position, was something humanoid, but clearly not human. Horror washed over her that made her blood run cold.
There was also, I think it was when we made the tape, if I'm not mistaken, that my father went over across the road with a shotgun trying to see if he could see anything, and he said he saw something with red eyes. Something that he saw with red eyes, and he said there aren't really any animals native to this area that have red eyes. So that was part of it.
Still plays.
It's still, oh, you have the original one? Is that in there?
I was wondering if it was some kind of bird thing, but
Yeah, it would make weird bird noises. I was telling him about that.
when we shined the light on it, and then a couple of seconds later, it was down at the other end of the field where that driveway was.
Yeah, it moved fast, whatever it was, or there were two of them.
Fast, whatever.
But he said he saw something with red eyes.
Red eyes, that's all.
She watched for a long moment, thinking it might just be a bear that would soon get up and walk away. But then, to her shock, the creature slowly stood up on two legs. It moved with surprising grace, walking off into the dim morning light, leaving her frozen with fear. The sight was so strange and unforgettable that a local columnist, Barney Fowler, later wrote about it in the Times-Union, calling them the Kinderhook creatures. Reports of strange encounters kept coming in, each more unsettling than the last. Up the road, a man named Philip Weingard claimed he saw a creature in a swamp matching the typical description and said it was making a horrible, spine-chilling sound. Another remarkable sighting came from Mike Babb, who was fishing at a nearby dam one afternoon. In broad daylight, he saw a creature emerge from the woods across the creek. It had reddish-brown hair, large dark eyes, and even black fingernails that were clearly visible. After observing it for a moment, the creature turned and disappeared back into the forest, leaving Babb stunned. With so many eyewitnesses describing tall bipedal creatures with reddish-brown hair and unsettling behavior, the question remains, are the Kinderhook creatures just a local legend, or is something truly out there in the forests of the Northeast? Footage courtesy. Flash of beauty Bigfoot revealed. During a Boy Scouts trip, Kevin Keeney, later known as Arizona Squatch, and his group experienced rocks flying, heavy footsteps, and a terrifying roar that shook the forest, marking the beginning of his lifelong pursuit of the unknown. He recalls a night marked by a massive rock being thrown, heavy footsteps, and dismissive leaders who insisted it was just elk.
We had an incident with a big rock being thrown and hearing the heavy footsteps and, waking our scout leaders up, and they're, guys, knock it off. You're just hearing elk or something like that, until the big tree got snapped, and one of the scout leaders discharged a pistol in the air, and you could hear what sounded like elephant running through the trees, and then a little bit later you hear this wah!
Until a large tree snapped. When one of the scout leaders fired a shot into the air, something ran off through the woods with the force and sound of an elephant. Moments later, they heard a deep, resonant vocalization echo through the forest. The man comes from a family deeply connected to the wilderness, with a lifelong tradition of hunting, fishing, and exploring remote areas.
And, did a lot of long-distance backpacking, solo backpacking, wilderness survival expert. Did 5 years in the military, have my family. My family's always out in the wilderness. Big hunter, big fishing. And, little while later, started looking for footprints and stuff like that because of stuff we'd seen on TV shows and that. And it really got started for me back in 2017 on a family outing when we had, some activity, found footprints and wood knocks and whistles and little stuff like that.
His curiosity about Bigfoot was first sparked by television shows, but it became personal in 2017 during a family outing when he encountered fresh footprints, mysterious wood knocks, and strange whistles echoing through the forest. Intrigued by these signs, Kevin began to study and track such activity more seriously. Now retired, he has dedicated himself fully to the pursuit, logging over 14,000 hours in the field, boots on the ground, carefully observing and documenting unusual phenomena in northern Arizona's forests. Kevin captured a short video and succeeded in provoking the creature to respond.
You know, so I got real curious about what's going on, and being retired, you know, I was like, I've got to spend more time into this, and so that's what I've done. And, you know, since July of 2017, I'm over 14,000 hours out in the field, boots on the ground, doing what I do. By the time I really got into this, my dad had already passed. And, you know, we used to go camping every year. And I can remember when I was real little, you know, I'd always want to sit on a log and look for bears.
The instant he stopped recording, about 30 yards ahead, beyond a dense thicket of young pines and brush, a deafening, bone-chilling vocalization erupted, unlike anything he had ever heard. The sound struck him with a wave of fear, reverberating through his body and shaking him to his very core.
That I had this interaction with when I was, you know, 13-year-old Boy Scout. You know, level of trust between myself and them started developing. You know, they would let the younger ones come around. You know, as long as you know, as always, I'm watching you. Everything's okay. You've got nothing to worry about, but I'm watching you. And it was never an uneasy feeling. It was always calming until it got to the point to where it was like, when you're out here, there will always be one watching over you.
Kevin decided to head back to camp, walking uphill toward it, about 350 to 400 meters away. As he made his way through the forest, he became aware of heavy, unmistakably bipedal footsteps just 20 to 30 yards to his right, keeping pace with him. Despite the enormous weight behind each thud, nothing was visible in the dense underbrush. Confused, uneasy, and increasingly tense.
And I go probably about 40, 50 yards and I come across a very large rattlesnake, and I'm thinking, oh, dinner. And so then I start having this weird conversation with myself, and I don't know why I'm having it, of, you know, why do you want to kill him? Well, because I like the way rattlesnake taste. And, you know, so this kind of a weird off-the-wall conversation's going on in my head, and I just have no idea why I'm doing this, because I love eating rattlesnake. And
Kevin struggled to comprehend how something so massive could move so close without being seen, a chilling reminder of the mysterious presence that shadowed him through the trees. After 14,000 hours tracking unexplained phenomena, does Kevin's story prove Bigfoot is real, or is there another explanation? Footage courtesy Animal Planet. In the bright daylight filtering through the windows, Cliff stepped forward with a calm confidence, his voice carrying just enough urgency to make the room lean in. He thanked everyone for being there, making it clear that this wasn't just another town hall. This was a gathering of the few whose knowledge truly mattered. He offered a special thanks to Mayor Tim Brett for inviting them back for a second time, noting that this meeting had been intentionally kept small and closed to the public.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very, very much for coming out. I want to thank you as participants in the town hall. I also want to extend a very, very special thank you to Mayor Tim Brett, because he's invited us back here for a second time.
This is a much smaller meeting. We didn't open it up to the public because we wanted the people who really knew about information that we'd be able to act upon.
Only those with real, actionable information had been invited, and as Matt scanned the room, he knew they had the right people. One man suddenly rose from his seat, the room falling quiet as he introduced himself. "My name's David." A moment later, another stood beside him, Matthew. Their story dated back to last April, on a night lit only by a full moon. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, leaving the woods wrapped in silver light. Without warning, a rock came hurtling out of the darkness and smashed against the side of their car. They turned just in time to catch a glimpse of a massive figure vanishing into the trees behind them. Neither man could explain what they had seen, only that it was enormous, powerful enough to launch rocks, and able to move with unbelievable speed.
And it looks like we've got some here.
My name's David.
My name's Matt.
And this happened back last April. The sun had already set, but there was a full moon out. A rock come flying out of the woods and hit the car. And we turned around just in time to see it disappear into the woods behind us. I can't explain what it was. I don't know what it was. It was big, it could throw rocks, and it could move like nobody's business.
Another witness stepped forward, explaining that she and her husband had been on their way home, easing their car over the hill that night. Then, without any warning, a massive figure strode out onto the road, fully exposed in the sweep of their headlights. It was enormous, far larger than anything they could have imagined appearing in their path. And then the sound came, a deep, gut-wrenching roar that seemed to vibrate through the air and settle in their bones. Her voice wavered as she stepped forward, eyes still haunted by the memory. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It scared me immensely."
My husband, we were coming home and we were going across the hill. This thing stepped out in plain view on the road. This thing was so big, and the noise it made was gut-wrenching. I'm sorry, it scared me tremendous. I still have nightmares.
The encounter had left a mark so deep that even now she was still haunted by nightmares, reliving the terror of that night over and over. Another witness, a man named Matt, leaned forward with a serious expression as he began sharing what he knew about the area. He explained that the national government owns a vast stretch of land there, territory that is completely off limits to the public. Back in World War II, he said, the atomic bomb was built on this very property.
Hey guys, my name's Matt Sieber. The national government has a very large piece of property in this area that is off limits to people. Back in World War II, the atomic bomb was built here. Don't cross the fence. Don't go through the gate. You'll be in a lot of trouble. That area, I've had security officers have actually seen things. I've had people contact me where they've seen road sightings.
Don't cross the fence, don't go through the gate, you'll end up in serious trouble. Matt went on to describe how even security officers had reported strange occurrences, and how several people had contacted him after witnessing unusual roadside sightings. He had even discovered actual tracks himself, evidence that something was moving through the restricted area, something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there.
The government could tell you if they were willing to. I can get you guys as close to this facility as legally possible.
Mayor Tim vetted some great witnesses for us for our town hall meeting, and they each marked their sighting location on a map. But before we go to those witnesses, we have to check out this property across from this top secret base that Matt Sieber's been talking about. This is an enormous sprawl of government land that's completely off limits to unclassified personnel.
What do you think? Could all these witnesses be seeing the same thing? Or is something else lurking in these restricted woods? Comment below and let us know if you believe these encounters are real. Footage courtesy Cabin in Woods. It began with an unassuming YouTube upload in the fall of 2012, one of those clips that didn't seem remarkable at first. A group of campers in Provo Canyon, Utah had been filming what they believed was a bear shifting through the brush. But when the dark figure suddenly straightened and rose upright, everything shifted. A jolt of shock ran through the group, and within moments they were retreating fast, realizing they might have captured something far more mysterious than ordinary wildlife.
My name's Robert. I'm a Canadian filmmaker and researcher, and ever since having my own Sasquatch encounter in September 2024, I felt compelled to dig as deeply as it took to discover the truth about these mysterious beings. So join me on this deep dive as I investigate 3 pieces of footage that captured real, living Sasquatches.
The campers insisted the moment began as nothing more than a curious sight in the brush, just a dark shape they casually assumed was a bear. But that certainty shattered almost instantly.
But when the dark figure in the brush suddenly stood upright, the group reacted with shock and understandably retreated very quickly. The clip went viral almost immediately, getting millions of views and gaining national media coverage.
One of them lifted a simple consumer video camera, its exact model never revealed, and began recording. The footage shows a massive, shadowy figure crouched low to the ground before it slowly, almost deliberately, rises to its full height, revealing something none of them were prepared to see. When the figure stands up, that's when things get interesting. Some people say it's just a blurry shape that you can't really make sense of, but others think the video shows something more. As the creature rises, it looks like a large left arm swings into view, an arm that doesn't match the shape or position of a bear's front leg when it stands on 2 feet.
As I was scrubbing through this zoomed-in version, I noticed what is obviously a head. The people filming commented that they could see the creature looking at them, and when I see this head, particularly the visible darkening contours on one side, I can see that it is indeed hunched over, facing them in this ominous, aggressive pose, and there's no doubt that this is the compact head sitting squarely on the shoulders with no neck to speak of that is so commonly reported.
While reviewing the zoomed-in footage frame by frame, the observer noticed what appeared to be a distinct head. The campers who filmed the encounter had already mentioned that the creature seemed to be watching them, and the close-up supported that claim. The head shape, especially the dark shading along one side, suggested a figure hunched forward, facing them in a tense, almost aggressive posture.
The figure rises from a crouch to an upright stance with these long arms and this frighteningly imposing frame that makes anyone who watches it for the first time feel their skin crawl. These movements are consistent with numerous Sasquatch descriptions and are honestly more difficult to explain away as a bear.
It also showed a compact headset directly on the shoulders with little to no visible neck, a feature frequently described in many reported Sasquatch sightings. After carefully watching the footage, the observer reached a clear conclusion. He said the encounter was real and described it as strong evidence supporting the existence of Bigfoot. In his view, the video showed something unusual and convincing enough that it couldn't easily be explained as an ordinary animal or a trick of the light. Could this be the moment we finally have proof that Bigfoot is real, or is it just another shadow in the woods? 6 encounters, 6 glimpses into the unknown, from fleeting shadows to chilling growls. Each story reminds us that the wilderness holds secrets beyond imagination. What was seen, heard, or felt lingers in the mind, leaving one question. How many mysteries remain hidden, just out of sight, waiting to be discovered?